Welcome to the Business Unscripted podcast. We're here to share real-life insights, practical strategies, and the honest lessons that we have learned from our own mistakes because, frankly, we have been in your shoes. So whether you need help with operations, accountability, financial knowledge, sales, or maybe just getting your mindset right, we are here, and this is the right spot for no-fluff conversations and tools that work. So grab your favorite cup of joe. Let's jump into the show. As they say, let's jump into the show, ladies and gentlemen. It's another amazing Friday morning. And Dwarren, you are warm all the time. So for us here though, in, Cleveland area, it's going to be like 70 degrees today. So it is a beautiful, gorgeous day. You cannot complain, but as I say, any day above the ground is a beautiful and amazing day for you to have an opportunity to do what you love again. So here we are. Hope everybody's having a great week. You're in the right spot. As we said kind of in the intro, we're here to talk business, different strategies, different experiences, obstacles that we've gone through in our businesses, how we've helped others overcome obstacles in their business as well. So if you're an aspiring business owner, or maybe you're a business owner and you're just looking to level up or just want some fun banter, like, you're in the right spot. So welcome back to another episode. We're at episode 51 now. And we're here every week, every Friday morning at 8:15 a.m. or sometimes a little bit later, depending on technical issues. But we're here live every single week, man. So it is amazing. Glad to be here. Hope you guys are having a great one. If you have questions, drop them down below. So we'll answer them live. So include them down below, and we'll get those updated for you. So Dwarren, Ben, thanks for joining me for another week, brother. How are you?
Thanks, Dave. One more week, and we will after this, and we'll have hit the whole year. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah. And actually, if we think about it, like, this is technically, I guess, like the year, because I had 1 week off where, because we had the baby. So this would have been episode 52, which would have been like a complete year of shows. But it does not seem like it has been 12 months since we kind of started this kind of journey together. So, but love it.
It's interesting, isn't
So
it? It's a community.
Yeah. It
It's
goes
like
quick.
anything. Just keep turning up every week and just, keep chipping away at it. And look at us now. It's pretty incredible.
I think we started, and we might have mentioned it last week. We weren't perfect. We didn't have any of this overlay stuff, and it just kind of was there. And I think as we said last week, don't wait for perfection. Like, just get started. If you look back at anybody at their first trial or their first video or their first work meeting, etc., like, you're gonna suck. Like, and that's the point. You learn, oh, okay, we got to do a little bit differently. All right, we did this. Now you're going to learn again, and you're going to keep learning lessons. And that's the beauty of life. The beauty of business is that you continue to learn. And then as you learn, you make changes and you make improvements. Now, if you're not willing to make improvements, then it's maybe not in your best interest. But I don't know. What do you think? We're definitely still growing. We're still learning for sure.
Oh, look, absolutely. I mean, it's like anything, right? You take one step forward and you every day just try and take another step forward, and eventually you'll get to the destination.
I agree.
You could sprint there, but it's like this was never about being famous for us. This was never about trying to reach millions of people. This is always about just reaching a few people and helping a few people that actually, our content helps and it connected to. So, and we, like you said last week, we were just doing this on a regular, and we're doing it before we even joined today again. Regular banter, catch up, what's happening during the week. It's like, let's just go live and talk about this and share opinions and see what happens. And I'm like, yeah, sure, all right, let's do it. Didn't really think too much of it at the time. And yeah, over 50 episodes later, and look where we're at. Obviously, some people enjoy it. We get the comments. We've got some people that tune in, and we've got people coming and joining us on the podcast now and getting involved, which is great. So, yeah, it's fantastic to see. I'm glad we're able to reach people and help them.
Love it. Well, I want to talk about a win. Well, it's not even my win. It's a client win, and you may be experiencing this in your business. You may be man, I want to raise my price. It's one of those things that a lot of people are so afraid of doing. However, it's needed if you want to make sure that you are profitable. And so I'm going to give an example. It's a client. They had a big sort of opportunity come at the end of a season last year, leading into this year. So it was kind of like a trial last year. They impressed. They met all the expectations, even exceeded a lot of them. But when we came to having the conversation this year of extending that and putting something more in depth in place, you really had to go through and understand, what are your costs? Like, what does this look like? And so many business owners want to jump to the conclusion of, well, this is like $200,000. It's going to be $300,000 to my business, because they look at top line, they look at gross revenue.
Yeah.
When in reality, that's not the important number. The important number is, what are you actually going to make gross profit? So after you pay all of your expenses. And so we went through a little exercise, and we won't get into the nitty gritty here, but at the end of the day, we determined that at the price of last year that he had done like the trial at, when we actually dove in and figured out what it's going to look like, he would have been losing money every instance of this job. And so it was really scary when we actually then projected out what the new rate needed to be. It was scary to him to be like, wow, I don't know if he's going to go for it. I don't know if they're going to go for it. And long story short, we kind of talked through the what to say, how to say it, the importance of explaining why there is an increase. You don't just go, oh, by the way, like, here's the price increase. No, you
Yeah.
explain it. You have, and in this case, like, there was a legitimate reason why we needed to raise the price. We don't just say, oh, we just need to make our profit. Nobody cares. But there's a lot of other costs that have to be considered, that once you get an understanding of what that relationship looks like, you're now able to analyze that and put that in place.
Yeah.
And long story short, we didn't get the full negotiated, our initial price, but that's okay. You're going to negotiate,
Hmm.
but they increased their price 25%.
So
Uh, and
there's
so
now profit in the deal.
exactly. And so now, and it's not like he's making, 75% gross profit now. It's a good profit margin that's going to cover a lot of his things. Uh, and it's going to help his organization, right? We're adding $300,000 to the business, at a gross profit of, 25%, which is awesome, right? Because before, you would have been breaking even, if not losing money. And now he builds a relationship, and he continued to grow as they're growing as well, because they're a growing company too. And so it just reminded me that as a business owner, it is so important for you to, one, understand what are the actual costs that are going into the delivery of your service or product, whatever it is. So many people overlook it. They just think, oh, yeah, we're getting 40% margin. Are you? Like, when was the last time, and is that right? Like, should you be pricing it a little bit more, because your margin should be more like 60, 70% versus
Yeah.
40? Like, why? And I know I've said the baseline is, you want to look at your industry average. Okay. And that's your baseline. That should be your baseline. But you should be striving to do better than gross profit margin of your industry. So if your industry is 50%, your goal should be like, how can we get to 60? How can we get to 70? You don't want to be mediocre. And so you have to
No.
think a little bit differently.
Well, interesting. Like, a lot of the things, like, we found when we did this exercise 18 months to a year ago, was that we actually found that we've always forgot to factor in the extra staffing resources from the administrative side. These are real costs to the business, which we never factored into the profit margin on services that we were doing. We'd be like, oh no, we just need to, it's going to take this many dev hours, this many design hours, this is how many hours of me. Okay, cool, we're good. But we'd forget to factor in that someone's got to generate the invoices, someone's got to send the invoices, someone's got to, chase that invoice. Somebody's got to make sure that, all these other processes are done in the back end as well.
But a lot of
Someone
that is supposed to be covered, right, in your gross profit margin.
yeah.
So, but I think if
But if
I
it's
remember
not high
correctly,
enough,
right,
it
exactly.
eats into it. So
Yeah.
suddenly that 20-25% margin, which initially looked fantastic, and you're like, that's great margin, it becomes 12.5%, because half of that gets eaten up with operational expenses. Or you start looking into, like, you know what, things are getting really busy. I need to put somebody else on. If you're running too slim on your margins, then you may not have a budget to put someone on. It may look very daunting. It may look like, well, you know what, it doesn't make any sense for me to put someone on because that's basically going to wipe out my profit margin.
What's up, GTA?
So,
Thanks for subscribing, brother. Appreciate it. If you got any questions about anything, feel free to drop them. Uh,
love it.
the idea, right, is you have to understand where you need to be. So if you want to make a net profit in your pocket at the end of the day of 15%, right? You're like, all right, my goal is 250,000, 15% of that. I'd like to make, $30,000, $40,000 profit. Well, if you're trying to operate at a budget of, and your gross profit is at 25% and you're trying to get to 10% or 15% net, right? Like, how are you going to get there? That means you're only leaving yourself 10% of actual, operating margin. So you really have to understand like the numbers and everything that kind of goes into it to really understand, are you pricing yourself right? And this is why it's so important to do quarterly reviews. Sometimes, monthly reviews is good to see if there's any sort of trending and anything like that. Uh, and if you haven't done it in at least 6 months, you're way far behind. So,
Well, I mean, it's
yeah.
interesting too. I mean, because there's other things that'll sneak up on you. Like back in Australia, company tax is like 27.5%, I think it is. It's almost 30%, if you round it. And if you're a consulting business that's predominantly been selling services, then that's a high profit business technically, because you're not paying, you're the one doing the work, and besides your salary, you're not pulling anything else out. Typically, you have to build up expenses, or you get to tax time and you realize, wow, I have to pay 30% for everything that I earn. So, if you haven't been putting it aside, you haven't built in the margins to allow for that. If you haven't built in that, you should be factoring in spending into your equation as well, because sometimes spending can offset and reduce your tax liability so that you actually pay less tax and come out with more money at the end of the day.
But
I mean, there's all these other factors that come into play that you really need to understand.
right. But when we think of, and this is part of like the profit first stuff that we talked about, right? So many people default to that. Hey, let me go spend money because I'm going to save money. But in reality, did you need to spend the money? Like, there's strategic, and that's why it's called strategic tax planning, not just tax planning, right? You don't want to just go, I'm just going to go spend this 100 grand to save 20, right? But the 100 grand was kind of excessive. I really didn't need to spend it anyways. And then you're like, well, wait a minute, where'd all my money go? Well, it's because to save 20, you spent an extra 100. You don't need to do that. That's why it's strategic. So is it more or less, right? I'm going to spend this money in January. Let me pay for it in December to get the tax benefit because I'm cash basis. Now that's strategic, right? But if you're just going to go spend money just because you want to, that's not strategic, and you're actually losing, and you're taking money out of your own pocket to do that, right? So you're basically saying, I'd rather go spend this money because I don't want to pay the government some money, and I'm going to take it out of my pocket. And that's where I think a lot of people misunderstand reducing their tax liability by spending, is they just think they're just going to go spend, and really at the end of the day, you're just costing yourself out of your own pocket and your profit margins.
I like that strategic tax planning. And it's interesting because that's not a conversation that comes up very often with your accountant. How am I going to strategically spend, so I can get the best value for my business and, obviously pay less tax? There's a balance in there somewhere. And like one of my clients back in Australia has got 3 businesses, and he's basically realized that one is just never going to be something that he can get away with lots of purchasing, because there's just nothing required. It's all consulting. And so he's just living with the fact that it's going to be very heavy on the tax. Whereas these other business, he can offset a lot with purchases because it's a tech-based business and he does need a lot of technology, etc., for it to be able to build it. So, but you're right. You shouldn't spend money you don't have. and you should be very cautious. And that's one thing I like about the profit first system when you talk about it, is you're putting money into the places that it actually should be, ready for spending when it should be, and you still keep the profit aside, that so you know that this is my profit level that I'm comfortable with and I'm happy with, and I can focus on trying to improve and strategize to make that bigger over time. And one way of doing that, like we talked about, is increasing your pricing if possible, or making sure your margins are the right margins. So yeah, there's lots of different other techniques, but it ties in back into that profit first, like you said. There's a legitimate way to help be strategic in your saving and your spending and your storing of your money effectively to make sure it's ready to use.
Yeah, you're taking control, and I say this on your calendar, but it's essentially your cash balance as well. Like, you're taking control of the money in your business and giving it an actual purpose. You couldn't imagine, like, money in your business is just like another employee. It's either working for you or against you. And by just leaving it in one account, it's essentially going to work against you, because human nature is, and we've talked about this, your the Parkinson kind of effect, right? Is your spending is going to expand to the resources you give it. So if you have one operating account, that's your main debit account, you spend it, as long as there's money in there, you're going to keep spending. Whereas when you can control that and you break it down, now the money's actually working for you. You know that, okay, I am actually gonna this money's for tax. In 3 months, I had to pay my tax estimate. Boom, done. Estimate's gonna go out. Or here's my profit. And this is the biggest misconception about profit. So many people are like, well, yeah, I took profit distributions. I take profit distributions all the time. I'm an S corp. I only pay myself a salary of this, and I get this much a month. And then the question I always like to ask is, well, what did you use that on? Well, I paid a car payment, utilities, I paid my mortgage. Well, that's not profit. That's your lifestyle.
No.
That's your salary as an owner. Like, that's your lifestyle
Yeah.
expenses. So profit, on the other hand, when you take a profit distribution from your business, it should be used to celebrate everything that you're doing on that quarter and that you did during that quarter. Whether you worked 12-hour days, 5 days a week, or you were working weekends, or you had to get called away from a kid's sporting event, like, that's why you have profit distributions, is to celebrate, and then celebrate with the people around you. Because what that does now is it gets everybody involved in the success of your business. So if your kids are going out and you guys are going out for a weekend away, or maybe you go to Disney World, if you have a really good quarter, right, and you had a really good profit distribution, hey, we're going to Disney this quarter because we did awesome. And this is why, by the way, dad or mom had to be working till 8 p.m. or that dad or mom had to, work on a Saturday because a client needed me. If you're just getting started, right, and you're not at a place where you can delegate a lot of stuff. But now everybody is actually involved, and they understand the efforts that go into actually being a business owner and making something work successful. And so that's a
Yeah.
profit distribution. And sometimes it could just be, hey, I'm just going to take, my wife out to a nice steak dinner because we don't normally get to do it. That could be a profit distribution as well. It's something out of the ordinary that you can say and look back on and say, you know what, I had a great quarter, or we made some movement this quarter and I feel good. And that's what it is.
Celebrating the wins, right? The big wins, the small wins.
Yep.
Yeah, this is the key. It's so interesting. Like, so many, like, you're right. Like, if you're just taking the salary and considering that the profit, then you're just surviving. You're just doing it for regular, living expenses. So
Yep.
yeah, if you live beyond your means, like, let's say, for example, you've got yourself a nice boat, and you've got yourself a couple of nice cars, and you have a beautiful big house with a mortgage, that might be what you want to spend your profits on. But for a lot of people, you know, you want to be able to say, hey, look, I had a boom a month, I had a boom a quarter, I had a boom a year, and I'm going to take the family out. I'm going to go and do something special. I'm going to do
Right.
something that I really want to do. I'm going to go and get something nice for myself or for the family. So, and I think that's really one of those things that is important to note. And we talked about it before, celebrating the small wins. You know, go and take your wife out for a date. Go and when you go to the butcher next, maybe you celebrate by getting that Wagyu cut instead of the regular cut of steak that you would normally get.
Right.
Just something a little bit different to celebrate for yourself, something to feel good. So, you
Right.
can sit back and appreciate it. If you're a drinker, maybe get that,
Sorry, no, we don't prank call on this podcast.
No.
Wrong podcast. Sorry.
Diddy Tones.
Maybe you might have changed your name too. But
You get calls from jail. Sorry.
We digress.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, like, I think profit in business is one thing that you definitely need to do. I would actually challenge everybody in business to ask the question, do you know what the profit in each one of your products and services is, or your primary products and services? And when was the last time you reviewed that? I mean, if we take a look at just world events right now, cost of oil, cost of diesel, cost of food, cost of power, cost of energy, all of these things are going up. And if they're all going up, have you looked into the cost, what your actual real costs are? Maybe your courier costs have gone up if you're getting products delivered or picked up and dropped off or drop shipped or something. And if you factored that into what you're doing, maybe you're traveling to a job site and you have to pay a higher rate for transport now because you've got a diesel truck and you're paying an extra, higher price at the Bowser. There's all these different factors that come into play, and all of these things can affect your margins. So if you're not regularly checking those margins, then you've got a big problem. Like we talked about, I think a few weeks ago, one of my clients back in Australia, he hadn't reviewed his pricing with one of his largest clients for 3 years. And when he finally said, look, I've got to do it, now he's got to jump through a pile of hoops to prove why it's got to go up, because his price increase is about 20% increase on what he was previously on. Where if he'd done the increase each year for those, he could have went up 5 to 7.5% and gotten up to the same place where he is now. Instead, he's trying to get it up to where it should have been if he had done those increases during the time.
Right.
He'd been asked by the client to hold back because they weren't in a position at the time to do it, but he's not in a position not to do it. So he's forced to do it. And they understand it, but they're asking for a lot of justification for it as well now, of course.
Well, and that's where regular price reviews should be done in part of your business, whether it's every 3-6 months, at least a year, right? But you also have to understand the relationship. There's a lot of pricing considerations that go into place. One, you kind of have to look at that relationship that you have with your clients. Is it personal? Is it more, so are you a consultant? Are you a, mentor, advisor, anything like that, where you have one-on-one interaction with your clients? If that's the case, then it needs to be a little bit more, time frame, which is the second piece we'll talk about in a minute. But the second, if you're like a SaaS provider, like maybe you just provide like a software, like now it can be a little bit more informal. It doesn't have to be, you're not going to try and call out to every single one of your, SaaS customers and let them know there's a price change. But when it's a personal connection, now it needs to be a little bit more formal, a little bit more professional. And so then you think of, okay, that's my relationship with my clients. All right, what's the time frame I should be looking at? And so again, if it's a large price increase or there's an increase that, it's a more personal connection, you want to give them a little bit more time. So you don't want to just do it and spring it on. Oh, by the way, next time I invoice you, it's going to be a price increase. You probably want to do that like 60, 90 days out. Whereas with a SaaS, a little bit more informal, if the price only goes up a couple dollars, maybe 30, 45 days is fine. And so the time frame matters. And then the third piece to consider when you're doing a price increase is the medium. How are you going to let them know that you are doing a price increase? So again, if you have a personal relationship with your clients, it should be more in the form of either a phone call or a meeting to actually walk through their new pricing. And this gives you the ability to explain to them why it's going up. And you don't want to just say, well, we have to make sure we maintain our margins. Nobody gives a shit, right? Your clients don't care about you. They care about them. So what you need to do is really highlight the value that they're going to continue to receive. Now, if it's somebody like your client there that said, well, we really can't afford a 20% price increase. Well, what we could do is I could drop you back to this other package, but here's what you're going to lose by doing that. And now it's on their decision which plan they want to go with. Hey, these are our new plans. I'll grandfather you into this one for like the first 3 months, but then at the end of that, you have to decide where you're going. And now it's not on you. You're not forcing them to pay you more. You're saying, here's what you're going to do. You're either going to upgrade, and we added this extra piece of value to this level of service, or you can downgrade, but you're going to miss A, B, and C. And now it's on them to decide what's important to them. You're not forcing them one way or another. So that's the personal side. And then again, if you think of like SaaS, now it's just an email, or it could just be posted as a banner too, depending on the price increase. Think of McDonald's. Think of, they put a poster on the door, by the way, effective, January 1st, we're raising our prices 10%, or 25 cents, whatever it ends up being. And nobody gives a shit.
Going up 5 cents.
Yeah. Yeah, we go into McDonald's. Oh shit! I thought it was only $1 last time. Now it's $1.25. That's a 25% price increase, but nobody cares because it's a quarter. But they don't realize. Well, that's still a 25% price increase, but nobody bats an eye. But in business, when you ask for a 5, 10, 15% price increase because your costs have gone up across the board, now it's like, oh my God, you're trying to rape me, right? You're trying to take you're trying to wreck me over the coals, whatever it ends up being, so the idea here is that think of those are the three main things. One, what's your relationship with your clients? Two, what's the time frame that you want to give them to announce the price increase? And then three, what is the medium? And then you, based on your relationship, pick those and then you let them know effectively. And then the biggest thing is if you are doing a big price increase, highlight the value. Like that's the biggest fourth piece is value. You either here's the new increase, but here's the new value. Or if you don't like that, you can always downgrade, but here's what you're losing.
We had a situation today. One of my clients was on a call with me. We're having a video call, and he got an email through, and he got a little bit frustrated.
Okay.
And I said, "What's going on?" And he's like, "Well, look, I got a client. They got a new admin manager, business manager, who's running their business, happened to be a veterinarian. And I'd previously spoken to the owners of the same business before about a website opportunity. So they're actually really nice people and very reasonable. And he had put their phone system in place recently, and they needed to set up their messages on hold. And they like 10 of them they needed to do for different purposes. And there's a fee. He has a small fee. It's like, I don't know, it's like $30 a message or something. And there was pushback. He'd quoted like, "Oh, so it's going to be $30 a message, blah, blah, blah." This email came through while he was on the call with me, and it was like, "This is ridiculous. I don't know how you can justify these prices. I could go and get these from other places at much lower prices. I thought these should be included with what we're paying for our service. They're paying $99 a month for the service they're getting. So it's not like it's a very expensive service to start with. But it's reasonable." And he's getting all stroppy. And he's like, on the call, he's like, "Oh, I've got to reply to this. I'm so annoyed." And I said, "I'll tell you what. Let me have a go." And I did a little dictation into ChatGPT, told her what I wanted to say. And I told it all of the steps that are required in order to get to where we need to be to deliver each one of those services for that $30. And outline that we're basically just covering the labor to do that for you. But you can get it for free if you like. We'll give you the instructions so you can do it yourself. And you're welcome to go and do it yourself and upload it yourself. And take it on yourself to do it. And that'll be free for you. He got an email back 4 hours later saying, all right, we'll go ahead and do it. Thank you. So there was an understanding at that point of what the value proposition was. And his initial reaction was like, emotion. And I'm like, no, just take the emotion out of it for a second. Let's focus purely on the value proposition that you bring to the table. Talk about that value proposition and see what.
When did you hear that? Like, take a moment, let the emotion out of it. We must have had a recent.
I don't know. What was that? That was like maybe a session a few weeks ago that we had.
That was it's
interesting, right? When
two episodes ago, we talked about that. Yeah.
That's it. And you're right. And you know what? Sometimes, in his case, he went and had lunch. And while he was off having lunch, I wrote this email and sent it to him. Said, "Here you go. You can use this if you need to." And he came back to me later on a call and goes, "Oh, that was great. They said they're going to go with it." He said, "I was going to go in a very different direction." I said, "I know you were going to go in a very different direction."
And it's really important. And this isn't even when you're just like pricing increase, right? Because this was more or less like, hey, quote me on this job. And it is so important to highlight the value of what you're bringing. And you don't just say, here's what we're doing, here's the price. Far too many people, they don't understand what you do, no matter what you do. That, Dwarren, nobody really understands what goes into the back end of a website. Nobody understands what goes into an automation or a form or anything like that, right? A lot of people, they see it, they think, oh, that's got to be easy to make. It should only cost like X amount of dollars. And in their mind, they've already made that up before they even talk to you. But this is why it's so important to understand and break things down by the steps or the scale of the support that you're giving them. Because you need to build that value up in their mind. And like I love what you did there, right? Because it was like, hey, by the way, like, here's your options. Either here's what we're going to do. Here's all the value we're going to do. Here's everything that's got to go into it, the different steps that goes into it. Or I can give you, in part of your plan, I can give you the instructions and your team can go do it based on the level that you're at. Which one do you want to do? And of course, they made the decision of, well, we don't want to do it, right? We're going to offset it. Now, for a little suggestion for your buddy, you can share him this, right? Would be include a higher level of service that does include some of these things every quarter. So, maybe it's 150 or whatever a month, but they get one or two of these upgrades every quarter or updates that you can help them install. So
I totally agree. In fact, it's interesting. We had a job I was quoting on today. And yeah, James, you're right. The emotion definitely comes into play. And, it is like a child for a lot of people. It is like you spend more time in your business working on it. And this is why a lot of founders struggle with scaling and growth and handing off responsibility to others, because you got to take the emotion out sometimes. Emotion got you to where you are. So you're, in some cases, so you're like holding on to that. But you're right. Thanks for the comment, James. But yeah, I had another situation today where I was quoting out a client, and one of the rebuttals that came through was like, we were offering a 30-day warranty on a project, software project that we were delivering. And they were like, oh, can we get 60 days? It takes us a little bit longer to get feedback in our company. And I'm like, well, no, because if I give you 60 days, it means I have to have those developers sitting there for 60 days. I factored in 30 on the original scope, not 60. Right. So here's what I can do for you. Rather than just say, no, I can't do it, we will offer you instead a alternative. Put it on retainer, and because you've got other projects to deal with, and then we can take care of that on the retainer. Or option B, we'll give you a maintenance agreement where we will basically fix those problems you have outside of the warranty period. Let us know which one suits you best. And these extra little steps is, you're not saying no. You're just saying, I can't do what you need. but here's an option that might work for you. Which one do you think is going to be the best solution for you?
Right.
And it was interesting because I've been playing around with this technique a lot this last week. I had another scenario where I went through, client asked for a discount on a website. It was like a 25% discount, which is fairly significant. And I said, look, the amount of work that we're doing, we can't do that. Here's what I can do. Gave him a 5%. I said, look, I can give you either a 5% discount on the website, cash, or I will give you a 6 months maintenance and security package, which we normally bill out at, and it was like twice as much as the, 4 times as much as the discount
Right.
that I was offering. And I put it to them. I said, these are your two options. Which one would you like?
Well,
They've
and
come
that's
back
the
and
other.
they said they want the maintenance,
I was
which
gonna
is
say,
great.
yeah, the maintenance. I mean, I always got. Before you even said, I was willing to bet like $1,000 that they set the maintenance program, right?
Yeah.
So,
And that's it. They
because
accept it. And the
yeah,
interesting thing was this: we offered them a 6 months maintenance. I know what's going to happen at the end of 6 months. Month 7, they're going to start paying for a maintenance plan with us because they're already going to have seen that the value of that is.
right.
They're going to see that the value for that is well worth it. And it's designed in such a way to make their life easier. So it's better to not devalue the original product, but to give them an additional product and give them an inclusion of it. And yes, I'm still
And I
giving
say
them a
this all the
discount.
time, right? And I say this all the time. Don't discount your services. Never. Because in your mind, now that becomes the value that you're worth in their mind. And that's the value that they tell other people that you're worth. So, and more often than not, a discount has to be 30 to 40% before somebody even considers, if they weren't going to buy and they're really restrictive of buying and really hesitant to buy, it's got to be the 30, 40% before they even consider it. So, and that's dollars out of your pocket because no matter what, your costs are the same. And so essentially, if you're taking a discount, it's coming right out of your pocket at the end of the day. But what you did, and this is what I agree with, is add some sort of value to the package that is value to them. So in this case, you offered 6 months of support agreement. Now, to them, the value is because what you would typically bill it and what it's going to renew at is correct. Like you're not inflating that value just to say, oh, by the way, I'm giving you $10,000 for the value as an add-on. You're saying,
No.
well, I'm going to give you the first 6 months of this for free. And then after that, it bills out at $199 a month or whatever it ends up being. So for 6 months, that's $1,200. And in their mind, shit, I'm getting $1,200 for free. As you said, my 5% discount that I would have given you was only like maybe 300. I'm going to go with the 4 times, and I'm going to get the $1,200 free and I'll pay full price. Now, the beauty of what you have to, you may be thinking, well, Dave Dorn, like, how do I pick, what do I do as an add-on? Like, I don't want to just give away my service. Like, I don't want to do that. Well, you pick what is something that you have, one that's going to increase the likelihood of success for that
Yep.
initial offering. In this case, support agreement, boom. It's the best thing you could offer if you're doing things like Dwarn's doing. But maybe it's a access to a mastermind. Maybe it's access to a free training or something that you're adding that you're charging for that's going to help them be more successful in your main program. Now, make sure it's low cost to you, the owner, right? So if it's something that's evergreen, that's perfect because you're not paying anything for it. In your case, Dwarn, you may be paying like an extra like hour or two, but obviously, if they don't use it, you don't have you're not paying for it, so there's no expense related to it.
That's it.
So
Yeah.
that's why on your
We
end,
work
you
it out.
you make sure that the cost that you're giving them is probably something along the lines of like, a couple $100,
Well,
to close the
but the
deal.
key of this too is, I mean, if you can, like the service that we put forward, we get an extra 6 months after the delivery of a one and done product to
Right.
give them a value proposition on what it's like to work with us long term.
Mhm.
And then that can become a monthly recurring solution. So, I mean, like if you look at somebody like, let's say, a car detailing company, very, very easy one that they could be doing is we'll give you a free tire shine, or, we'll give you a free, brake rotor clean. We'll remove the wheels and give them a thorough cleaning, your brake discs, pads, whatever, do something, or an
Even
underbody
even
clean, or
doing
something that's
something
something where that they're probably going to come to you later and go, you know what, can I get that service that you did again? How much is that
right,
normally? Oh, it's an extra $50. Can I get that? Can I add that onto my package? Sure, you can, because it's a
right, or
value
or
added
you throw
proposition.
in
They're
like an
likely to want you there.
extra, yeah, you throw in like an extra like car wash or something. Like, hey, in 3 months I come
Yeah,
back and I'll wash it. I'm not going to detail it, right? But I'll wash it because you're staying top of mind. That's the whole idea, is that you're keeping
yeah,
them in front of you as the business, and then you're getting the opportunity to make that impact, build that relationship, and extend that relationship. So James said something here too. Easiest way to get out of the emotion is to get it written out, make it into a process and a system, which makes it objective. Have everything in production, base bidding, everything, and have it set up, um, set markups all in writing. And I think the idea here, and I've mentioned this because I actually helped another client do this, where they thought they were getting a specific margin on their jobs. We went back, we actually did a review process, and it found out that they were only getting about half of the margin that they thought they were getting. And so it's because everything was in their head. They were using an outdated number. They were using, they weren't including all their cost of goods sold. We turned it into a process. We built out an actual estimate form that now they fill in the actual numbers that go into their cost for each estimate. And then their margin is now built into that, because now they enter, I want to get 45% margin. It pops out, this is your invoice price based on everything you estimated. And by
yeah,
doing that, you don't have to think. And here's the other caveat of that. Now, by getting it out on paper, you don't have to be the one to do it as the business owner, which we
that's
were
it.
talking about pre-show as well, because your whole
Systemize
goal,
processes.
yes, is that now he can go if he really wanted to and bring in an estimator, and he doesn't have to try and get everything out of his head and train it, or the estimator doesn't have to, call him and say, hey, by the way, like, what's this? Or what would you do in this situation? It's all in the process. It's all in the system. And so now that's one other thing that soon he can get off of his plate, because now he could pay somebody a commission to do all of that. Now he's not coming out of money unless there's actually the actual jobs that are there to work. And so it's a
Yeah,
beautiful thing once you begin to start thinking of these different options, to realize that you don't have to be the I wear everything hat, right? The chief everything officer, as I like to say. You have to truly understand, where can I look at my processes? How can I get them out of my head? How can I document them? And then how can I delegate them? That is the importance.
it's
So,
interesting too, because also once you start documenting like that, building those systems, what you're talking about there can just be a simple spreadsheet with your formulas in it. I've got a simple one
yeah,
that I built for outsourced staffing. I know based on how much I can charge a customer versus how much I can pay for a staff member, and maintain my operational
right.
costs and profit margin that minimum profit margins I expect.
But here's the
People, once you've got that, you can build automations, you can build custom GPTs with that information and that formula in there. You can go over and build yourself a Google Gemini gem with the automation sitting in there, so that when you do have these scenarios, you can play it. I had one today. I had an outsourced technician who came in asking for more than what we'd originally budgeted for a client. But because I had my spreadsheet ready, I was able to look at my spreadsheet, work out based on what he's asking for to what that meant for an increase for the client, and say, look, that's what it actually equates to.
right.
And they were like, oh, okay, cool. And I was able to answer that on the fly rather than say, look, I'll get back to you. And you look so much more professional, and it looks like you're actually being very, when you've got those systems, you can be very accurate, and you're not guessing and going, oh shit, I was put on the spot. I just said a number and it was wrong. I mean, how many times have we done that? How many times have you been caught in the, and you go and you put a number out and you go, oh man, I shouldn't have said that. I didn't factor in
Right.
this, and this. So
Yeah.
these
I
systems
mean,
are magic once you actually get them in place.
and like you said, like, it's good to start with a spreadsheet, right? I'd rather you get up and running and do something in terms of like getting started on a spreadsheet. But you kind of highlighted it. There's so many other important steps after that, once, just because you sent an invoice doesn't mean it's the end and you just kind of let it go. you have to get out there, you have to follow up,
Yeah.
you have to, kind of see what is did they get a chance to review it? Are there any questions? And so as a business owner, you have to have these sort of systems in place, which is what we're building with him. He's got this estimator tool now, and then it automatically in his format, right? Because he used to do QuickBooks, used to have to do the estimate, talk to the client, go back to QuickBooks, enter the estimate, send it to the client, then wait for the client to then approve it in QuickBooks, and then he would manually then turn it into an invoice. Well, think of all the time it goes into that, And by the way, QuickBooks, you're really limited in
Yeah.
how you can format your estimates. So we're building right now for him to follow up on the estimate form, the actual whole flow. So now once he hits submit on the estimator, it's going to send an email to the client. Hey, by the way, fills in the document. Here's your estimate in his format. Here's your estimate. Either, click here to approve, let me know if you have, or, click here to, submit changes, or click here to decline. And then depending on how it responds and how they finalize it, now you can then go and have, okay, if they hit approve, it automatically creates an invoice, and then with that goes into the second piece, which is now you collect the deposit. But then there's follow-ups. So once you send it to them, you follow up in 24 hours, and then in 48 hours, you can ping yourself to say, hey, John Smith hasn't signed his contract. Go reach out to him. And then now you get pinged on your phone to then give a call to John and just check in. Hey, John, we sent you over that proposal you requested. Did you have any questions? You want to go over it together right now? Okay. And then now, you're pinging. And that's the biggest thing is you just stay in front of people. And then from there, you can follow up again. And then same thing with your invoices. And that's why having that process is good. Like the spreadsheet's great to start, but you also have to make sure
Spreadsheet is just the tool that you use to help you get your margins right and make sure you don't miss out on anything that you need as a mandatory, especially if you've got products and services that can scale and you can just work on a number and then works out all the calculations in between. But you're right, you need a process. An SOP is so important, and it's such an underrated thing in business. The amount of times I sit with business owners, especially like tech companies, and you say, hey, look, so what's you're bringing on new outsourced staff. What's your SOPs you have in place? Oh, I don't have any. How? Well, we kind of like just do training sessions with them and they learn how to do it. There was one the other day. He brings on technicians, and for the first 6 months, they take along with him.
For 6 months?
Everywhere. 6 months. He brings them with him for 6 months. Every day when he goes to site, what he does, everything. They mirror and they shadow. And I'm like, that's not scalable. He goes, I've got 2 guys and it's worked really well for them. And I'm like, okay, but you'll plateau at like 3 or 4 people. That's just not possible to keep expanding and growing like that. You can't offshore like that. You've got so many limitations. You can't do that and expand into other states and territories. You've got limitations with that sort of technique. Have you thought about just building out SOPs? Nah, it's easier for me this way. It's like, okay, cool. I'm not here to change you. I'm just curious about the technique you've employed to do it. But then I talk to other business owners who go, you know what? I really need to build SOPs. I said, or we build you a tool that you can give to your staff that they can use to build the SOPs for what they do during the day. Then everybody's responsible for doing the SOPs for their own jobs and do it in a standard template format that works for everybody. And then have a central knowledge base that holds all that for you. He's like, oh, that's such a better idea. I like that. It's not such a daunting task at that point. There's so many different ways you can tackle this problem, but you have to start, even if you just pick up a piece of paper and draw a flow chart of what that, the flow of that system looks like, so you can start thinking about it. Documenting each section of that as you go through, you'll start to realize parts of it are not that explanatory or don't work as well as you thought or a little bit repetitive. and you may improve those processes. And that's
Yeah.
another thing that you should definitely be willing to accept is your processes will stay static. They're a dynamic process that are always going to be moving. Very true, James. Very true. Especially when you're like one or two people in a business and you lose one person or two people in your business, you just lost a huge part of your knowledge from the business. You know, I've got other clients right now that they've got employees that have been on board for 12 years who refuse to document their processes because they've got an inflated
Yeah,
opinion
well,
of
with that, I mean,
self-worth
I
that
think
they're
them, like,
worth as much as
if
their
that's
knowledge that they've gained
if
over the
that's the
time of employment.
case, if that's the case, like, you just kind of have to. I mean, you're the manager, you're the leader. You kind of just have to say, like, this is my expectation of you. Like, you have to do this, otherwise, you know, we're gonna hold you accountable. Like, you just have to. And like as James
It's a
just kind of
live
said there's so many ways for you to get it out of your head. One, you could talk to AI. And sorry, Dwarren, it looks like there's a delay in our audio. So there's literally AI you could just talk to, it'll transfer it. There's Scribe, which is one that I see all the time. I've never used it, but Scribe is another one that I think
pretty good.
you just do you just do your work and then it follows you along. It'll take screenshots and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to do it. It just does it for you, is what I'm understanding. I only say it because I know I'm it's in the back of my mind to actually go and do it now that as we're growing and expanding as well. But you have to get it off, because otherwise you're still going to be the bottleneck. You're still going to be the person where everything stops at you. And if you don't do that, you don't break that pattern, you're setting yourself up for failure.
It's very true. And look, and you're 100% right. There is Scribe's a great one. Even the free version of Scribe's actually pretty good. There was a new one that I saw recently. I'm just going to see if I can track it down, and we can post it here if anyone wants to take a look. But there was one I saw recently that I was exploring on AppSumo, a buy once get it forever sort of deal, lifetime deal, where it's actually
Or hire guys like us.
exactly hire people like us, James. We should do some self promotion. But like, it's true. Like, some people, like, I remember years ago, there was a company I worked for, and they actually hired in for like $100,000 some company to come in, and it was like 2 or 3 of them. They sat down with every employee and mapped out the entire. They were project managers, mapped the entire process out, and then presented all the SOPs and documents. The one thing they forgot to mention was once they left, someone had to take over and keep updating those documents.
Right.
Because it just wasn't that those things don't just automatically update themselves, right? So that's the thing. You got it. Whoever, it's like the information in a system is only as good as how relevant it is. So if you start noticing that your systems are out of date, you have to have a change log process in place to change the version, to improve it, to make it better.
Well, and you got to be mindful as well,
requirement.
Because depending on your business, you may have like actual responsibility to be following them to a T. And I think of healthcare because I have a lot of experience with healthcare agencies. Depending on your certification, and you get audited, which sometimes in order to keep your certification, it's like every 3 years. If you are not following those processes, you are going to fail the audit. You may lose your certification, which could put you out of business, which is why it's so important to actually understand what your processes are and are you following and are you up to. I had a conversation with somebody recently and they're like, oh yeah, we have like 3 booklets of processes. I'm like, oh, that's funny. I said, because I knew that like the business and the operation. I said, how many of those are you actually following? And the individual was like, I don't know. And I said, exactly. I said, they need to be updated at least every year. And how we did it when I was in corporate in this world, right? Each department was responsible for their processes and they had to kind of report out, here's what we're updating, here's our suggested changes, and then it had to go and it had to get approved by, the board. You have to do that. And a lot of small business owners don't think that way. And you don't necessarily have to be that in depth right away, but it is important to just get it out of your head. Write it down. And I say this too, and we've talked about it. Think through, like, in the future, what does that ideal structure look like? What does the ideal business look like that you're striving for? And put it down on paper. The revenue you're making a month, the number of employees that you have, the structure that you have. How many clients do you have?
Yeah.
If you're looking in brick and mortar, like, where are you at? Because by doing that, you then can outline, okay, here's all the people that I'm going to need to hire. Here's all the processes, the departments that I'm going to have to develop. And yes, it may be 10 years down the road that you're striving for this. But now everything that you do now, you can start and see why it's important for you to say, okay, here's our process. And things are going to evolve. That's fine. But you can put down the job descriptions for those people. And here's why. You don't want to have to do this when you're busy and growing, because you're already busy and growing. You're never going to have time. But now, if you're not where you want to be, right, and you're still growing for that and you're expanding, document that stuff now, because then it's going to be there. And the worst case is you just have to maybe just update it a little bit. Whereas if you have to start from scratch when you're already working 40, 50 hours a week to serve your clients, and now you're still growing and now you're trying to bring somebody on, when are you going to find the time to develop it then? You're not. So it's so important to kind of focus on this stuff now when you're smaller than wait till you're just like, oh, I'll just wait. I've heard this conversation. I'm sure you've heard it too. I'll just wait till I get bigger. Okay. Let me know how that goes.
Yeah. And this is the thing, right? I mean, how many those booklets, like, we've all seen companies that have those booklets, they have the processes. Somebody's decided at some point that when new staffs come on board, that someone trains them, and it'll be like, oh, look, don't follow this process. This one's out of date. Oh, where's the new one? I'll just show you how it's done. If you've got that many processes in your business, you need booklets, then you probably need to revisit how many processes you have in your business anyway, and maybe just focus on just the core SOPs that you need and the core systems to run your business, because it sounds like you got a lot more systems than are probably needed. The last thing you want is for your staff to have to learn hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of systems to be able to do a job, because that's not going to be effective for anyone either.
Exactly.
Excuse me.
Exactly.
So,
and
yeah, I think it
really
all comes down to the individual.
And I think we actually talked about it when James was on the show, is just start with one process. Just like we talked, just get started. Put it in your calendar. Every week, I'm going to spend an hour out of my week to document, to talk into AI, or to log into Scribe and just do one process. And that's all it takes. And then by the time you get done with it, you're going to realize in a couple months, you've got them all done, And so first thing would be plan it, go into AI and say, here's my plan of all the processes and everything that I need to get out of my head and document into a wiki or, a document library for growth. And then every week have it, say, okay, here's the one we're going to focus on today. Let's get started, and like you said, a gem. So put that then into a Google Sheet. The gem can be attached to the Google Sheet. Tell me which one we're working on this week. And then you work on it. And you can even have, a reminder sent, or have, if you're on ClickUp, and which is what I use ClickUp, and I have my personal assistant. It can set and find times for me, find me an hour in my schedule this week to do it. So yeah, it's James. You're right. Exactly. As James says, you know how to eat an elephant? You just eat it one bite at a time. Just like you eat your steak or your chicken or whatever. Like, everything starts with one bite. Your pants, right? One leg at a time. Like, nobody's different. Like, nobody has more. We talked about this before. Nobody has more time than you. Nobody is, a special circumstance. We all have our own scenarios. Like, essentially it's just an excuse. It's really just an excuse. If you're just like, oh, I just don't have time to do it. It's an excuse. I'm sorry. Like, I, I know it's just slap in the face for some people to hear it, but you know what? You have to hear it. And when I first got like full time and a coach, essentially got into coaching, and I hate the word coaching nowadays, but I used to be in the like, well, I just got to be really gentle and just like be really, kind of empathetic, and so, oh, okay, you didn't get that done. Well, let's just do it. We'll do it now. Well, fuck that. Like, I've made this shift. Like, dude, no, you need to do like, do you want to be successful or not? Because ultimately, if you're if you're going to be passive and you're just going to keep giving excuses, then we shouldn't be working together because you're not making strides. And ultimately, since making that shift, it took me about probably 9 months to figure this out, 9 to 12 months to figure this out. But people are way more successful now because they need that. That's why they're in this situation. So if that's you, and I call it the mirror moment, go look in the mirror. You can lie to Dwarn, you can lie to your spouse, you can lie to your employees about all the effort you're putting in, about all the lack of time you have, right? But you can't lie to yourself when you look in yourself in the mirror at the end of the day. If you look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and you try to tell yourself, yeah, I did everything I could. Really? If you could lie to yourself, you might be a psychopath, but you can't. You know exactly what you did.
Well, it's true. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like if you want to coach like you're in a little, a coach who treats you like you're in little league, that's that's just someone, coaching a team to have some fun. You get to college grade, high school grade, professional grades, you don't get coached the same way. They're not as pleasant because they're telling it how it is, and you have to put in the effort. There's an expectation that you turn up and you put the effort in. It's not about just turning up and getting a participation award. If business was about turning up and getting a participation award,
Everybody do it.
Guess what? Everyone be doing great. It's not. The ones who are successful are doing more behind the scenes than you'll ever know, or they've hired people to do a lot more work behind the scenes for them, and they've invested in the right places
to make it work. Yep.
Exactly. They built the processes. I mean, and if you want to understand businesses that have invested in processes, look at any software company and look at their knowledge base for their help desk systems. Those were not built for any other purpose other than making their life easier. These are the most commonly asked questions to reduce the amount of friction of using their product. They go and make a knowledge base so you can help yourself. These self-help tools are just them documenting their processes on how to do things with their tools. And why do they do it? Because it means that more people can do it themselves and take less stress off their staffing resources that they have to provide. These new AI support chatbots are designed in exactly the same way. They're designed to give you the answers as a user quickly and not rely on talking to a human that actually costs money. A significantly larger amount of money than an AI system is currently costing. So these are just systems that have been put in place. A lot of the times when you look at these businesses, you don't even realize how much time and investment's been put into these systems, or where they started with their systems. But what's typical is you get founders and business owners who just get so stressed out because they haven't systemized anything, or they've tried to systemize and it didn't work because they haven't found the best technique to systemize that works for them. There's not one size fits all system. You have to find the one that works for you. And it could be you just start telling someone else that works for you what to do and have them document it. Maybe that's your system. Maybe that's how it works.
Correct.
If you're not capable, or you don't have the time, or you don't have the interest, find someone else in your team who does have that capability. We talked about rocks and rock stars last week in our teams. Go and find yourself the person whose personality fits that role better and assign it to them. someone who's going to, really appreciate that level of system implementation. Because you'll probably find that as you continue to grow your business, a lot of people are going to really thrive with systems, because it gives them the tools and the routines they need and the guardrails and the guidelines to deliver and, get the praise for doing a job well done. If everyone's having to sit there and reinvent the wheel every time, then that's a lot of brain power you're having to put in for everything you do.
Well, that's why it's really important. We'll talk about this next time. So it's in terms of, right, you're really analyzing what you're doing, what the team's doing, and we'll get into that next week, and I'll make a note of that. But for this week, I mean, so we covered pricing, right? We covered kind of systematizing your process, everything in terms of that aspect, and I think we covered a lot. We're at our hour mark roughly. So for me, one, if you have questions on any of this, drop them down below. You can send it to, either one or, I or Dwarren's DM, however you're watching this, wherever you're watching this. But, down below, there's also a link. You can schedule a call. You can do any of this to kind of have a conversation to learn about your specific situation. And we'll answer those questions live, or we'll get an answer back to you in one way, shape, or form. But with that, Dwarren, what do you hope they take away from today's episode? What is something that high level that you hope they get a chance to kind of walk through and kind of maybe take away and implement in their business today?
I think pick one thing in your business that would work better with a system, and then try and build the system, even if it's just drawing the system out on a piece of paper or explaining it to ChatGPT or any other AI platform, and ask it to help you build an SOP around it. Start with one, and then give it to somebody else in your business and ask them to try following it and see if they get stuck.
Right.
If they get stuck, it means there's a problem with your SOP. So then identify that problem and go back and fix it. But don't try and make 10, 15, 20 systems. Start with one. Once you get that right, you'll start to reap the rewards from it. You'll see the value and you'll want to make more.
100%.
Because it just makes sense.
And to kind of piggyback on that is, now that you have the processes documented, now you analyze, well, how much time was I spending on this every week, every 2 weeks, every month as the owner? Because in the end of the day, that's where you have the opportunity to then work on your business and not in your business. Right. And so if you're doing admin hours and you're spending 10, 15, 20 hours a month as an owner doing this work that is not adding value to your business, then you have to find a way to get it off your plate. That's how you grow.
Mm.
That's the biggest thing that you can do. And so really understanding your time that you're spending in the business doing a lot of this admin work, the work that shouldn't be done by you. You look at a CEO. No CEO is doing admin work. No owner is doing admin work. You don't see, Jeff Bezos out there doing, bookkeeping or, editing code on a website, right? He does his job, which is actually growing the business, building relationships, bringing in new clients, bringing in new customers, bringing in new products, bringing in new service lines. That's what you should be looking at as the owner, not how do I make sure that my invoicing is caught up, which it feels like you might need to get started. Not saying off the ground you shouldn't, but ultimately you have to then figure out, all right, how do I get this off my plate? I'm at a point now where I need to get this off my plate. I need to invest in my business to grow my business. And so that's what I think you really need to take away from today is give yourself an analysis. And we'll talk a little bit deeper about, processes and all of that in the future, but really understand how much time are you working in the business that doesn't require you to, because it's not adding value to the business. And then how do I switch that and start working on the business to actually grow it? And so with that, I hope you guys take something away from today. Remember, we're on a mission to impact 1,000 business owners by the end of 2028. And we appreciate you being here. If you got a tidbit, maybe 1, 2, 10, I don't know, share this, like this video. Make sure you're doing all that fun algorithm stuff. Give it a like. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you get notified every time we go live. We go live, as we said, every Friday morning, 8:15 in the morning. We look forward to sharing our thoughts, our impacts, our ideas with you all. We're glad you're here. We love you. Hope you have a wonderful and amazing day. Dwarren, thanks for joining me again, and we'll see everybody.
Thanks, Dad.
We'll see everybody in the next one. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.